I kind of went to the main area where a lot of the people where I had kind of gotten tips to where to go, and it was the Harley dealership is where a lot of these civilian operations were happening out of there. And
Harley
so,
Davidson motorcycles. Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
yep. So they had a dealership there, and they actually had this big grassy area, and you've probably seen the pictures and everything like that, because that's where Elon Musk's engineer was there. That's where Glenn Beck was the week prior to me getting there. That's where all the big, like, that's where they're kind of running a lot. What they're doing is they're moving all these Starlinks up with generators into the mountains to get people connected so that they can actually let people even know that they're okay. And again, this is a week later, they're still trying to
yeah,
get people connected, because what it is a lot of the road systems are washed away. The
yeah,
like there's people just kind of stranded, and they're what's happening is they're all kind of conglomerating into the center of town, but because nobody has power, so they're kind of just um, consolidating into one area, so when they come up there with supplies, and they can hand them all out.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.
welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 227. Before we start, I want to acknowledge the passing of Chip Miller. Who was one of the founders of the Institute for Justice. They've done some really great work, and we certainly want to give our best wishes to his family and all the people at IJ. Today, I'm talking with Sara Higdon, who is a digital marketing manager of Free the People with the Free the People organization. She's also been doing some relief work in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene in the Appalachian region. She's in northern Georgia right now, and she's also the first trans person who's come on our show. So, how are you, Sara?
I am doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. How did you become a libertarian?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of grew up into I was a conservative in a conservative family. I was more of a constitutional conservative. After 9/11, I was more of a neocon. Believed we had to have, strength through power overseas. And then when I then turned into more of a Tea Party conservative and was pushing, constitutionalism. But then it was actually Ron Paul who I really agreed with a lot of his stuff, but I still at that time, in the mid 2010s era timeframe, I couldn't get past his foreign policy still. And so it took me 5 years of serving as a logistics officer in the United States Army before they were teaching me big picture foreign policy, and how to invade countries. And when I started looking at maps, and I realized that between Iraq and Afghanistan, there's this big country of Iran. And so I realized that we didn't go to Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. We didn't go in there for oil. We went in there for a strategic position, a double flank position on probably our biggest adversary. And so that's when I realized that Ron Paul was right. And also, I was seeing that in our, you know, as we elected all these people into Congress in the Tea Party on these values, that they were going to go in and start slashing budgets, and that they were going to, amend the Constitution to, try to get balanced budget amendments. And then they were passing these omnibus spending bills under Obama. They were working with Democrats. That really just pushed me away from the two-party system as a whole. It pushed me away from the Republicans completely and made me just disengage from politics. And that was when I discovered even more about like the Libertarian Party as a whole, and moved in that direction. Now I didn't vote for Gary Johnson. I will say that Joe Jorgensen in 2020 was the only vote that I voted for that I have not regretted, because I was writing in Evan McMullen, or Evan McMuffin, as I would say,
Egg
in
McMuffin, yes.
2016, because there was a lot that turned me off about like, the Johnson Bill Weld situation, especially when Bill Weld endorsed Hillary Clinton, basically.
Yeah,
It kind of pushed me away from. I'm like, I can't vote for them. They don't even want to win. They're going for that. So it pushed me away from it at that point. And now Evan McMullen has become a complete socialist too. So it's just like you can't win a lot of times when it comes to presidential elections. So Joe Jorgensen, I don't regret that vote. So that's it. And that's kind of my whole path to libertarianism. I got out of the Army in 2017 and have really started moving in this direction of online activism and working with liberty organizations.
Sarah, I am so amazed. I mean, I went to Boys State as a teenager in the '80s, and I remember when the first Iraq War, when I was prime military age, and we still heard all these World War II vets talking about how great war is, and veterans are completely different now.
Yeah,
they're the loudest voices opposed to all this interventionism, and I used to hate veterans. I really did. I mean, they were the biggest voices for getting involved in every war, and now they're opposed to every war. I'm really amazed to see this change. And
it's really interesting because they're in the liberty movement as a whole, there is a huge conglomerate of veterans that are like, no, we should be anti-interventionist. And when John McCain passed away, that was kind of the last of the strong hardcore neocons that were veterans. Actually, I would say, what's his name out down there in Texas? Yeah, Dan Crenshaw is probably the last of it now, but he's kind of taken up that mantle, but he's the only one even really that has any military background that's pushing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's true. I don't know if there's anybody else right now
I mean, even when you think about it, J.D. Vance himself is actually a anti-war veteran, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if any of none of them are like that anymore. Well, all the World War II vets they're just gone, and nobody really, and the Vietnam vets. They I don't think they were ever really for it. They're pretty quiet, but some of them are pretty good. But yeah, that's one of the things.
I think that was the big thing, though, right? Is World War II was seen as this moral war that was always seen as in history has been a positive war that we came out the winners of and everything like that. But then you look at Vietnam. Vietnam was a stain on us invading a sovereign nation for what and so that was a huge thing. There was lots of protests for that. And then we've seen 23 years of war just for us to get out of Afghanistan, and all that work and all those people that died just goes to waste because of the way we get out and just leave the country in shambles, and just to be taken back over by the Taliban 24 years later.
And the money and the loss of the moral high ground. Yeah. So what have you seen? So, it's often how, I can remember watching MASH, how they always portrayed that. I guess you were a military bureaucrat, it sounds like. I mean, you said you worked with logistics. Were you one of these people who pushed all these forms around, or what exactly were you doing?
No, so I was actually, I was on the front lines when I was in. So I was.
Sorry if I was disrespectful.
Oh, no. No, I was so my first duty station, I was at Fort Campbell. I was with the 101st. I was actually with 4th Brigade, 101st, where I was the FSC, Forward Support Company Executive Officer. For the 1st of the 506 Infantry Regiment. So when we deployed to Afghanistan, I was the tip of the spear of logistics to push supplies out to multiple outposts. And we were also coordinating supplies to close down FOB operations over there. So we were on the ground, and I was on the ground running convoys every few weeks. Me and my commander would go back and forth. And then after that, after I came home from after I got back from Afghanistan, I moved over. I became a captain, and I went into 3rd Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division, where I was again managing supplies, but more on a brigade level aspect, to all the right to the tip of the spear. So making sure everybody had all their food, water, ammo, everything that you need to fight a war.
Yeah. So now, since Hurricane Helene has hit the mostly eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, a little bit of South Carolina, some of the southwestern part of Virginia. What have you been doing up there in the last few weeks? When did you go in?
So I just went up there last weekend. So I just went up there. It was Saturday and Sunday. not this past Saturday and Sunday, but the Sunday before. So it was about a week after it had hit.
That would have been
and
the 6th.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I
Okay.
went up there. I was so I'm a reporter for the Post Millennial and Human Events. So there's a story up there. I wanted to tell the story. There was a lot of misinformation online. There was a lot of stuff going on online, a lot of rumors speculating. So I wanted to get up there and tell the story, tell what the truth was on the ground, you know, what actually is going on, what's going on with FEMA, what's going on with, you know, let's talk to people on the ground and see what they actually are dealing with and how they feel about the government response to the situation. And so when I get up there, it's interesting. So I was told, I kind of went to the main area where a lot of the people where I had kind of gotten tips to where to go. And it was the Harley dealership is where a lot of these civilian operations were happening out of there. And
Harley
so,
Davidson motorcycles. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So they had a dealership there, and they actually had this big grassy area, and you've probably seen the pictures and everything like that, because that's where Elon Musk's engineer was there. That's where Glenn Beck was the week prior to me getting there. That's where all the big, like, that's where they're kind of running a lot. What they're doing is they're moving all these Starlinks up with generators into the mountains to get people connected so that they can actually let people even know that they're okay. And again, this is a week later, they're still trying to get people connected, because what it is a lot of the road systems are washed away. Like, there's people just kind of stranded, and what's happening is they're all kind of conglomerating into the center of town, but because nobody has power, so they're kind of just consolidating into one area, so when they come up there with supplies, and they can hand them all out.
Yeah.
What's interesting is this Harley dealership was taken over by they offered it, like, they were opening their doors and they cleaned everything out because they were a little bit flooded and everything like that, I guess, the first couple of days. But they opened it up. There's this a former Green Beret, his name is Adam Smith, who he does savage arm or firearm instructions, or Savage Freedoms is what his organization, I think, is. And so he's a former Green Beret, and so he reached out to his whole network of retired and, you know, former military leaders, and mostly our old SF guys. And so they kind of started running pretty much military-like operations out of this area with helicopters, with civilian helicopters, moving people into these mountainous terrain and doing what they used to do in the military. They would offload, they would walk the terrain to try to find people, live out of a backpack for a few days, and it was like another walk in the park for them. It was really interesting. When I got there, I saw that the National Guard was actually reporting to these civilians. So they were being underutilized. So some of the National Guard units were being attached to run like ground operations under these civilians to then like take supplies in their bigger trucks up into the mountains where they could get into and supply people. And then while I was actually on ground there, there was a probably a 10-man team from Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, but SF team. So actual active duty special forces was on ground. They landed there in a Black Hawk, linked up with the team that was there to, again, group guys. They all know each other, so they're coordinating with them a little bit, and they're kind of getting situation reports of what's happening in the mountains and where they should be looking for people, and also trying to deconflict some of the issues that was happening between the civilian organizations and FEMA on the ground. Like, I saw FEMA there, and I was like, the entire time I was in Asheville, I saw 2 FEMA agents. And it was that first day, they just came there for about 5 minutes. I saw them real quick, but it was really interesting because with them was 2 ATF agents. I'm I'm like, what's the ATF doing here? This doesn't make any sense. And so they were together, and then they left, and they just kind of left us alone. But it kind of had everybody up in shambles, and I don't know what was discussed behind the scenes or anything like that. There was some conversations that I'm a reporter, so they didn't want to, bring me into some of these conversations that were off record. But it was really interesting to watch that. And then the next day, I went down into Asheville to see what was happening in the city of Asheville. And it was really, Asheville's an interesting area because it's a city and it's on the top of a hill. So the city itself is on the top of a hill, and then there's like the River Arts District, and there's other stuff that's right on the river. And so the city itself never even lost power, but on the river is like completely wiped out. Like areas where I had been back in like 2021, I have pictures of completely like buildings destroyed, like just down. And so watching that, I decided to be like, okay, well, where is FEMA? So I heard, the Register of Deeds had some stuff going on. And I went up there, and there was all these just local volunteers basically took over the Register of Deeds office to do like wellness checks on people that, I guess the day after the hurricane hit, family was calling. They hadn't heard from loved ones, so they were trying to see if they had called in there for the hotline or whatnot. And so they opened this office up, but only one person there actually worked at the Register of Deeds. It was all these volunteers that had set this up and were operating this for over a week. And then from there, I just started driving around to the locations that they said that FEMA was supposed to be at, and I never found them. I couldn't find a location for FEMA at all. They were kind of like I called them like an urban legend, because like when I was down at the River Arts District, one of the guys said, "Oh yeah, we've worked well with FEMA and they're helping us and all this stuff." I'm like, okay, well, where are they? And they couldn't point me to them. And then I talked to somebody at a school where they supposedly, I guess they had a water point set up, but they I was like, okay, but where are they? And they just kind of pointed me to the public radio station's website where they have stuff posted. So they actually had a FEMA stuff posted where they were supposed to be. So I went to all those locations and I couldn't find them. But it was really interesting to watch. But yeah, I couldn't find them.
Yes, FEMA wasn't there at all, or that's rather.
Well, that is it. And this is a lot of what I think. There was some stuff online, with the administration and FEMA giving $750 on top. I mean, they will pay to do a lot of the renovations and stuff, but there's a whole issue that comes with the money that they're giving, because when they're giving this $750 to people, that is for immediate need and groceries and stuff like that. But the problem is, half these people can't apply to it because they don't even have access to internet yet. They don't even have power. So how are they supposed to even apply for this aid? And then the next thing is, none of these stores are open. So what good is that money going to do you in the immediate need? The money is invaluable to the people that's actually, providing the support and actually giving like food, water, and shelter and all this stuff to people like voluntarily. The money is invaluable to them, but it means that it's useless to the people that are suffering.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed happens in a lot of cases. You don't have the people don't money really isn't going to help these people. You need to take stuff. You need to take fruits and vegetables and clean water and maybe gasoline, and it's
yeah. Well, that was the big thing. It was an ever-changing situation up there because of what was going on. So like when I was on ground, they were like, we have plenty of water. We have 10, 20 days of supply of water. Water is what most people want to give, but there's a lot of bottled water there. But the problem so like now going into this weekend, actually, I think it was last week, we were looking at 39-degree weather. And so the people that without power were going to need space heaters. And so how do you get them space heaters with fuel? So then the situation changed from needing food, water, and all this other stuff to we need to get that, and even Starlinks, we need to get them, now that they're connected and all this stuff, we need to get them heaters so that they can survive this cold front that's coming through. But I mean, yeah, the money's not going to do any good for them. It's going to do great for the people that are trying to, donate supplies and get stuff out there, and fuel costs for these civilian helicopters, but not for the people that need it.
Yeah, certainly. So, I assumed since you were in Asheville, is the state of North Carolina doing anything,
Well,
or
that
the
was
states just concede all this to the feds now?
yeah, there was a lot of that. Now, I would say when I was down by the river, all the search and rescue teams, all the recovery teams, all the people that were clearing out these toxic, like the buildings that had fallen, all those recovery people that were like cleaning up the mess that had taken place, they all had like North Carolina gear on. It was all like their people. Like I said, they sent the National Guard out there. They were being underutilized initially, but they were being used when I was up there. So North Carolina was doing quite a bit more than I would say the Fed was doing up there, which is kind of what you would expect. And I would say, I mean, I'm a minarchist libertarian, so I do still believe that we need a strong, military system to protect our borders. And I would say that in disaster situations, if our soldiers weren't consistently overseas, they would be the best people to respond to a situation like this.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, somebody from North Carolina, you're more likely to get somebody who knows the area. I mean, they're not going to need a map. They're going to know where this road goes. They're not, they're not, and they're going to know the roads. They're going to know the cities. They're going to know little things like the hills and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why this has kind of gotten lost too, is because it's North Carolina, it's the mountains. And I don't think a lot of people can wrap their heads around the fact that a hurricane caused so much destruction in the mountains of North Carolina, because we're used to seeing it hit the coast. And the damage is not so easy to go see. Like when Hurricane Katrina hit, you could walk through New Orleans and see the damage because it's flat.
Yeah.
When you go into the mountains, it was these rivers that just took everything out, and you can only really see it by helicopter. And even by helicopter, the tree cover is there's still a lot of tree cover covering up the full extent of the damage. So you can't really understand that this hurricane caused that much devastation in the mountains. It's just I just don't think people can comprehend that.
Yeah, having grown up in the northern panhandle of West Virginia and seeing occasional situations where you might have a microburst that would go, and especially one that was actually on the other side of the river in Ohio, but where they got 5 inches of rain in an hour, and so these valleys just completely filled up with water, and you had this wall of water coming down the valley that was 20 feet high. And so I do understand that. Yeah, I do wonder if not everybody quite understands how much damage, because all the valley is just a very narrow part of the landscape, and it's just the valley becomes a gutter basically.
It funnels water at a high rate of speed, and water.
Yeah,
I've seen water. 3 feet of water start to move an up-armored Humvee sideways because it was driving through it, right? Water is very powerful. It can move a lot of weight.
Yeah, when you get a lot of it, and water always goes down. It always figures out. Water always finds a way. It's it's amazing how roofs or whatever. It's just there was that one case too where a girl survived the flood, but the flood took off all her clothes. Which is probably which you actually in a situation like that, you're better off if you lose your clothes anyway, but because your clothes when you're in the water with all your clothes on, you might as well have a 50-pound weight on. I mean, it's very heavy.
That's true. So this was really interesting too, is because again, serving going back to my military background, I've served in the 82nd and the 101st, and I've seen the unique capabilities that they have. They are uniquely qualified to be able to operate in that type of environment, yet none of those units were even called up. And I mean, the 82nd has the what we used to call the Global Response Force. I think it's changed names now, but they're available to deploy anywhere in the world within 72 hours, and yet they didn't even deploy 200 miles away to the east the west side of the state that they're in to help take care of that. and they are, like I said, they're uniquely qualified. They're airborne and aerosol operations,
Yeah.
and should be able. They know what they're doing in the mountains. That's one thing. If you look at Afghanistan, they've operated in Afghanistan. We know what we're doing in the mountains and austere environments in the mountains. So why did we not call up one of those units? It doesn't make sense to me.
And those mountains are a lot higher. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was at 13,000 feet, I think is what we were at. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the highest mountains there are around 6,600. It's I mean, they don't even have snow caps on them. In the middle of summer, you'll see these mountains are completely green. But
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, it's getting cooler, might be a little windy, and you have all that damage from the rain, and it's not really something people think about. And the other problem too is the water can show up almost instantly. One minute everything's fine, the next minute just this wall of water comes down.
Yeah. Well, and this was almost a perfect storm when you look at it, because so what kind of happened with the storm is, I mean, it hit hard in the coast of Florida, and then there was a high pressure system on both sides when it moved through Georgia. And I mean, I'm in Atlanta, and it crossed over Atlanta in like 2 hours. It hit at like 6 a.m. and by 11 o'clock we had sunshine. But the problem is, even here, it rained for the 2 days prior to it even landing, and it was doing the same thing in North Carolina. So everything was already wet. And then when it got through Georgia and hit North Carolina, it hovered over that area and opened it up and expanded and just continued to flood rain down. And so it just created this even worse situation up there.
That's what happens a lot. I've noticed. A storm will move pretty easily across flat land, but then once it starts to get to the edge of the mountain, suddenly it's got this resistance and it slows down. And you've got a case where imagine you got a bucket of water that's just going along, and then suddenly it stops, and it's got a leak, but then it just land stays over all this, and it probably weakens some. And it's still a hurricane. We've had. I mean, even up as I said, in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, you'd get remains of hurricanes up there, and caused some of the highest. Caused some of the highest water we've ever seen on the Ohio. It's a.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, it hit. We got lucky here in Atlanta because it was supposed to hit us dead on, and it moved east, and that's kind of what ended up causing all it was good for us, but then it ended up being really bad for them up there, because actually, I mean, a friend of mine lives over in Augusta, and he had a tree fall in his house there, and I mean, eastern Georgia was hit pretty good, but it just seems like the most devastation was up in Asheville.
Well, Asheville's the one big city. I don't know if it because I did ask one guy in Knoxville, and he said he was fine, but because I just thought if he got hit with it, but there's Asheville's a city a lot of people go to. It's because of the Biltmore House and some of the various sites there. I think that's just. I mean, the media talks about town. Tries to talk about towns that people know and people have been to. I've been in the Smokies, but it's been a while. So just drove through to see the mountains, and it's
oh yeah,
lots of gift shops and everything that probably had to hurt the season. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I mean the Gatlinburg areas. That's Gatlinburg is a little bit of a tourist trap, and
definitely.
But it's nice because you can go into the tourist trap areas to get like food and stuff like that. But then you can also stay in the cabins and stuff outside.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Yeah, and I suppose now would actually be a pretty busy season because you get people come by, they want to see all the leaves change and all that stuff.
Yeah, fall is one of probably the bigger seasons in the mountains. Even down here in Blue Ridge or in the Blue Ridge area of North Georgia, it gets pretty busy.
And it's a little cooler. And I've heard. I know there was that section of Interstate 40 that got washed out. Apparently, the Blue Ridge Parkway. Did you see situations where there are still people out there where they couldn't even get to them by car at all?
Yeah, and so see, that was the thing. A lot of people was talking about Asheville, but the two big towns. So were Swannanoa and Chimney Rock. Chimney Rock was the big one, and they were talking. I mean, that's when I was out there. Like, they were they flew a helicopter into one area, and everybody was kind of just in town, was kind of just hanging out at the local church, and that's where they basically dropped the Starlink. Then they're like, okay, well, you guys can all conglomerate here and take care of each other, and we're going to put a Starlink here, and you can all connect to it, and you can all have a generator and everything. You have a little bit of power, and so that was the easiest way for they all can. It was like a whole town that came together, and they were just gonna hang out until they could clear the roads. And actually, there was a lot of, I call it kind of, the backwoods ingenuity happening. They were talking about some of the roads. Just, one of these mountaineers with a backhoe was fixing roads, and some of the roads were already fixed in a couple of days because people were out there with a backhoe would just fix them up, and so then they would be able to drive. But then I also saw an article where they were like, oh, I think it might have even been FEMA or one organization. They were like, we can't get to you because the road's closed. They're like, well, no, the road's fine. You can pass through it. It's just a little bit rough. But they're like, well, no, there's the road closed sign, so we can't go that way. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's open. And so, but yeah, I mean, it was a lot of just them taking care of themselves, and they were going to clean these roads up, and they were going to be able to get through. But yeah, there was quite a few areas that they were like, yeah, we can only access via helicopter right now.
Not everybody has a backhoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one runway at the Asheville airport, and it is 8,000 feet. So you can get a 737 in there or an Airbus A320. So no jumbo jets, but you can get the mid-sized jets there.
Oh yeah.
But otherwise, this is a mountainous area. It's mostly going to be helicopters, because you just can't you just can't fly those other kind of planes that easily in these areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I was actually concerned. So, Kamala Harris was supposed to come up. I was told she was going to be in Asheville the day I got up there. So I was kind of concerned because that would have started grounding flights. And so thankfully, she actually did the right thing by going to Charlotte. So she went to Charlotte, again, 150 miles away. My only thing about that was she was acting like she was visiting the survivors of the hurricane when she didn't even see any of the devastation from the hurricane. She was using it as a photo op, but I was glad that she stayed away. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because you're going to have all this security stuff just gets in the way. It's like because they ground all these flights and do all this other stuff. It's
yeah, it would have actually hindered the operations to take care of the people, and it probably would have been worse in the situation.
But it sounds like, Elon showed up, and he doesn't have any security teams, so he just shows up. Or was Elon there? Or?
Elon was not there the day I don't even know if he actually went up there. Yeah. Like I said, I met his engineer. If you see the video I posted, he was actually in the video that I had posted, talking to one of the operators on ground. And but actually, the day after I left, I think he was there the second day, but Dr. Phil was actually there the second day, going around. And I saw the video of Dr. Phil, then I see Elon's engineer in the background. So they were flying around. I think Dr. Phil had gotten some helicopters to bring in to help with some of the operations too.
Yeah, and I don't know. I suppose Elon might have his own plane or his own helicopter, but So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think that they had it there, but I know that there was plenty of air assets on the ground. The biggest thing that they were more worried about was fuel.
Yeah, that would be a problem. And, apparently even Ron DeSantis sent some planes from some aircraft up from Florida too. So, because I guess he had it, says, well, we might as well send it. Yeah. So, you know what? Does it seem like I've heard people say that FEMA changed after the World Trade Center? Is that correct? I mean, that they used to maybe have more of a customer service attitude. Now they're more focused on security, because as you said, why was the ATF there? It's.
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. One of the guys on grounds, when I asked about the ATF being there, he was like, well, in these types of situations, they are worried about militias coming in, and they were probably, actually, it was more so probably the ATF checking out their operation to make sure they weren't sending ammo and guns and stuff into the mountain. I mean, a lot of these people were carrying because they, there was a lot of people concerns of looting and stuff like that. But so a lot of them were carrying firearms. But I think the ATF guys might have been worried about, trying to, like, if just verifying that these weren't militias moved into the mountains to set up like these, camps or whatever, and like extort people or whatever. I don't know. But what I did hear is when it came to FEMA, the only time that somebody told me, like, the only time that you would see FEMA is if you requested assistance, then they would come out to your house and verify that you needed that assistance. And so that's the only time that they were doing anything, was going out to people's houses that had requested assistance from them via the internet, when most of those people don't have internet right now.
and another thing to consider too, though, with regard to ammo, it is fall, which is when most of the seasons are, but the people in the mountains say, well, we can't grow food, we can't go buy food in the store, but we can still get food another way.
I can still hunt it. Yeah,
I can still shoot some squirrels, I can shoot some rabbits, I can shoot some, I'd be curious to know if the game wardens are being, probably if they're going out and enforcing some of these limits like they normally would, or there might be some. I would suspect there probably is an increase in illegal hunting at a time like this.
I would say that there probably is. I would say that they're probably not even worried about it, though.
Yeah, I would think that got to get food. It's
they're I mean, even some, it depending on the situation that these officers and stuff are in, they might even be out there hunting themselves. Honestly, it's the good old boy attitude, and there's reasonable expectations that could take place in these types of situations.
That's another thing too, though. How does this flooding affect all the fishing? That's
unfortunately, it's probably bad. Because so one of the things about Asheville, that right along the river, again, like where the River Arts District, and there's all this little area right along the river there's actually a PVC plant that got hit. And so when you see actually some of these, like, downriver, PVC, like the big PVC pipes, they're making PVC pipes there. And so when you see downriver going more towards the Knoxville area, you see PVC kind of scattered all over the ground out there. And it's mostly because these big yards of PVC were hit by the flood, and it was pushed around. And so you start to think of what those plastic chemicals in the water are going to start doing to some of that wildlife. It's really going to cause issues with the fish populations and stuff. And then a lot of these fish are now disoriented because they just got moved, like, miles downstream from where their, like, nesting habits and stuff are. So I think it's going to be a mess for the wildlife in the area as well.
So water in Asheville does go toward, you said, toward Knoxville, and then eventually to the Ohio River, I guess. It doesn't go to the Atlantic.
Right. It goes, so it flows west.
Well, it does eventually go to the Atlantic, but it goes to the Ohio and Mississippi first. But
yeah. So it flows west, and I'm sure some of it starts to flow down because, like, again, we're in Atlanta. We have the Chattahoochee here, but it starts to flow west more towards Knoxville. And I know in Chattanooga, there's the big lake that's in Chattanooga, and then it floods out into the river that goes down, and that meets up, I think, with the Chattahoochee down by, like, Columbus, Georgia area.
Yeah, well, the Chattahoochee definitely goes into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
The river at Augusta, of course, goes into the Atlantic. That's the Savannah River. So it's you got a combination of different watersheds here. I think if you have water in Charlotte, that eventually that goes to the Atlantic. That goes east or southeast.
Yeah.
So I should look that up. I'm not exactly sure where the divides are, but there are definitely divides there. So yeah.
I'm not the complete geography expert on it, but I'm pretty sure, just thinking about, when I've been up through those areas, how it works.
Do you see any instances of various bureaucrats saying, no, you can't help, no, we don't want your stuff, no, I mean, I'm hearing stories like this, but I wonder how true they are.
So when I was up there, I heard the stories. They told me firsthand. I had one person who was talking to somebody, and we were trying to get them to go on record with their story because they saw this again, this is secondhand information that I got, but apparently they saw people from FEMA taking supplies from organizations that were trying to help, like taking them off of trucks and stealing the supplies. I can't verify that information. And also there was also something, I guess, where they pulled up to a different airfield that was there too. They were going to go in and use that airfield, and the organization, I think they had claimed to be FEMA too, and they said this airfield's closed and all this stuff, and none of that was true. And so it almost seemed as if maybe it wasn't actually FEMA that was doing it, but it could have just been like road pirates saying that they were FEMA to try to get food, water, and all this other stuff and get these supplies. And so we can't verify that it was actually the feds or anything like that. But it does sound like that stuff was happening, but it could have just been looters.
Yes, it could have been. Yeah. So I did see also Appalachian State had one football game canceled because of this. So I don't know if what the various colleges are around. There's Appalachian State's over in Boone, which is a little further, which I think is about an hour away, but
yeah,
still area. Yeah. So
that area is Western Carolina, is the heart of there, and I'm sure that they're still dealing with a lot of it too.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's quite a few schools around there. So some other groups. I saw some videos from. You probably know Shane Hazel and Bitcoin Veterans. They were doing a lot of good work. Looks like.
Yeah, I know Shane. I've known Shane for a few years now. But I had not seen any of that's one area where I didn't actually see, what they were doing for it. So no.
Yeah, they put some videos out on Twitter. So if you're not on their page, but yeah, Shane's another good man from Georgia. So yeah, also, I guess one thing is one person pointed out some real heroes in all this are those linemen.
Yeah,
I mean, those guys. That's somewhat dangerous work in there, where they all getting the power lines back up. And
I'll tell you. Well, yeah, when I was on my way up there, there was convoys of power trucks going up there from the different areas from the south, at least from Georgia and stuff like that, coming up. I don't know exactly which states were going up there. And so, yeah, they were heading up there. But yeah, I mean, driving around, even like there was one spot, they actually had cones because the power lines hit the center lines of the two yellow lines, and then they still had the two lanes open. So you just drive under these hot power lines, I guess. And then I was actually had to be careful when I was walking around. There was a golf course. There was a municipal golf course in Asheville I was taking pictures and video of, because it was on the other river that flooded. And yeah, there was some power lines on the ground that I guess were hot. So I just had to be careful not to step on those when I was walking around out there.
yes, if you don't know, they're hot. Kind of like a gun,
Yeah.
If you don't know, it's loaded. So
yeah, I was walking. I'm like, oh, that's hot power lines down here. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's water too. That could create a very dangerous situation because water is highly conductive.
Yeah, that whole area that I was in, though, so that was weird because most of the places had started to restore power. That area still they didn't have power, so it was like almost like different areas interspersed throughout the city didn't have power, just based on where they were located and how close they were to the rivers.
Yeah, definitely. One thing you talked about, Asheville's on top of a hill. That's true, but does that mean that the hill was isolated and you couldn't get to it, or what's? Because you're on the hill, you're not getting wet, but sometimes every road to get to you is completely washed out.
No, so the way that hill, so it's on the top of the hill, and actually all the major freeways kind of run into it, and they're on the top of a hill, but they're also kind of down the mountain quite a bit. So when you look, they're the Swananoa and Chimney Rock are like kind of way up here, and then it kind of comes down. Asheville is like right here on like this little plateau, and then you go down, and then there's the river area down there, and then it just keeps going down. So there's like a valley next to Asheville that really got hit, but all the major freeways, and that was the thing, all the major freeways seem to be open just fine, because other than some trees and stuff along the roads, they didn't really get any of the major damage because they were kind of on elevated ground.
Yeah, Chimney Rock. I see. Yeah, Chimney Rock's actually about 25 miles southeast of Asheville. Yeah, so yeah, I noticed there's also a town around there called Bat Cave.
Yeah, actually, the Bat Cave sign was on the ground.
Yeah.
When they had it stood up, just propped up on with cement blocks, basically, so you could see where Bat Cave was. Yeah, and those were the main areas, though. And Swananoa is, like I said, that's where the Harley dealership was at, that they were kind of running operations out of. But that whole area was still covered in like sand and dust. Like the CVS right next door was completely covered. The whole parking lot was covered in sand.
Wow, where'd they get sand up there? That's wild.
Well, that's just from the flood.
Yeah, I mean, usually you think of sand at the beach. You don't really see sand that much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sand is kind of an interesting thing. It's yeah. Yeah, did you see a lot of animals running around, or birds? I mean, I assume they got impacted by all this too. I mean, were they acting strange, or just kind of you didn't really see much of them?
I didn't really see much of them when I was up there. And part of that's because I was mostly taking main roads. I wasn't actually going back into the cut very much, because you start to go into the cut, you just don't know how the roads are going to be. So, I just kind of stayed to the main roads when I was there.
Yeah, and you know, some of those roads you don't even know if you're going to be able to turn around very easily. I mean, you might go down a road, and then you literally have to back out the way you came. It's definitely not something you want to. I suppose
and you don't want to be backing out on a mountain road. So
yeah, of course, one thing, you know, and you know, a lot of people who live in places like this, they tend to have a lot of ATVs, and some of them probably even got horses. I don't know. Did you see a lot of people doing stuff with horses, or you know?
There was quite a few people with horses that I saw. There was the ATVs, the dirt bikes, people riding the side by sides, like all that stuff. Everybody, like, that's mostly what was driving around up there, and it was just kind of, it's the easiest way to get around.
Yeah, and at a time like this, you know, they're probably, you know, because ATVs aren't supposed to be on the roads, but I suspect the police were probably pretty lax on that too. You know.
Yeah, they didn't seem too worried when they were kind of in our area. They were just like, okay, cool. It's almost like, so I grew up in Michigan. It's like in the wintertime when you just ride snowmobiles on the road and nobody really cares.
Yeah. And an ATV, you could probably, I don't know if you could even hook up a small trailer to it or something. You might be able to.
Yeah, most of them you can
pull some things with it. Yeah, you know, you can haul things.
But yeah, some of them might even be, you know, hauling firewood, trying to stock up so that they're not freezing.
Yeah, you know, that was one thing too. That sometimes, you know, when it gets cold, you can at least gather in a place. You know, so if you got, I mean, you know, if you got, because everybody makes heat too, and if you got 100 people in a gym somewhere and they're all sleeping, it's easier to warm. It takes a lot less power to heat that up than it does, you know, 100 different homes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you think? Do you think? What would you have to say? You know, if you had to assess the whole Fed situation with this, I mean, are they doing a good job, or just who's doing a good job, who's not doing a good job?
Yeah, I mean, this whole the whole reaction to the situation and natural disasters as a whole, we've kind of seen it for a while, is it really makes the case for voluntarism, because it really is, when stuff like this happens, it's the good nature of people that takes over and wants to help and organizes stuff to go help and sets up. It's all volunteers. Like I said, even in this, you know, Asheville is a fairly liberal city, and everybody there was just, jumping in and pitching in and helping out and covering stuff. And like I said, I the only people from the federal government that I really even saw was some SF guys from Fort Bragg. Other than that, it was just normal like some retirees and just people that wanted to help out and supply and take care of their fellow man. So I wouldn't think that, the federal government, they really didn't do a very good job from my perspective going up there and seeing. In fact, they were quite absent. It was noticeably absent where they were. And so it really does. It makes the case, like I said, for voluntarism, because we take care of our own and we don't need the federal government to take care of us.
Yeah, and I've noticed people in places like this tend to be better with that than elsewhere. It's Fort Bragg. I know Fort Bragg's in Georgia. Is that right? Or
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
So right outside of Raleigh.
Yeah. Well, also, it's not too far. Yeah, that's fairly far away. But what also is not too far away in that area too is Lejeune. But that's Marines. But yeah, Lejeune is over there somewhere too.
Yeah, it's over on the coast. I think it's a little bit further east even than Bragg. The other thing that we saw happen, and this is kind of what you would expect to see happen too, is the churches. The churches started taking care of people too, because there was other people that we know in the Liberty movement had kind of told me about one of the churches that's over there. And so I went and checked it out and talked to the pastor there, and it was really interesting to hear him talk about, because they have like an internal logistics network among the church that, like, their main operations is out of St. Louis, and they were coordinating with them and getting supplies into the area. And so that's kind of what you would expect out of a church in a disaster situation, that people would know that if they need something, they go to the church and they're going to be taken care of, because that is like the whole mission of the church, is to take care of the community.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw did you see in any groups like the Salvation Army or
not the Salvation Army. Now, the last spot that I stopped at the North Carolina, I think it was Western North Carolina Agricultural Center, where FEMA was supposed to be. And I stopped in, and it was the Red Cross was running a massive shelter there. And so the Red Cross was there, and that's how I was talking to the guys there. And he reminded me, when I was talking to them, he was like, yeah, but remember, we're a nonprofit organization. We don't get money from the government either. And I was like, that's a good point. That's a really good point. The Red Cross doesn't receive money from the federal government. They're just an NGO that operates in these situations. Yes. And this is what they do. And it's a completely nonprofit organization in and of itself. So again, the federal government has nothing to do, and they were running this great massive shelter and helping people get bus tickets to go, stay with family and stuff.
Yeah, were any other super rich people trying to give things besides Musk? I mean, Musk
Musk was doing a lot, obviously, with Starlink. Like I said, Dr. Phil was up there.
Yeah. I don't know how much money he has, but
Yeah. Glenn Beck was up there, and his nonprofit organization, Mercury One, is still doing operations to help supply North Carolina. And so Glenn was up there and saw the same operation that I saw the week prior, and his organization came back and started sending space heaters up there, because that's what they were expecting that they were going to need. So we were all kind of getting the same information as to what they were going to need up there. And so he's probably the next biggest person that I think was up there. Other than that, I don't know, but yeah, he's using all his resources over at the Blaze to kind of push the information out there to get people to donate and send supplies up there. But let me see, was there anybody else? I don't think so. I know. What's his name? I also saw something. There's an article on Human Events that I was reading. Yeah. And it made the case as to why Eastern Tennessee should be the model for what to do in these situations. Because was it Glenn Jacobs?
Yeah. Oh,
did a
and
great
yeah,
job over in his area.
Kane, but
And
he's way over, isn't he? I mean, yeah,
well, he's in Knox County, and
yeah,
so but Eastern Tennessee,
yeah,
the local governments, local situation, the
yeah,
local governance over there, it sounds like it was night and day situation where they had they had similar stuff, but they really took care of their own on a local level without the federal government support too, which is again what you would expect. The local government should know how to,
yeah,
address these types of situations, and that's who, if you believed in government at all, that's who should be operating these
yeah.
things.
The richest man in North Carolina is the founder of the SAS software company. That's James Goodnight. And the richest man in Tennessee is Thomas Frist, Hospital Corporation of America. I suppose that would be connected to Bill Frist, would it not?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of people who have money who might, I don't know if they have resources, but they definitely have money. So,
Well, the biggest people in that area too, and you could kind of see it, are the people that are operating the Biltmore estate.
the Vanderbilts. Yeah.
Yep, Vanderbilts, and then the Biltmore estate there, which
Yeah.
that whole area was underwater too.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when I talked about like all I guess sand washed up from the river, when it flooded over. I drove down in that area and they had just gotten power back, but everything was
Yeah.
kind of Biltmore Village is where all the rich people in the area kind of live over there. That's like their
Yeah.
little community,
Yeah.
and they got hit pretty good. So, but they'll
Probably not going to help the wines either. Yeah, the Vanderbilts. Yeah, they gave a lot of money to this college and all that other stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else more you want to say on this topic. Also, I wanted to go on this topic. You transitioned at one point in your life. When did you do that?
So, so I started taking hormones in March of 2019.
Yeah,
So a couple years after I got out of the army, I took a few years. I mean, I was taking a lot of time to figure out who I was, explore things. Came out in 2014, so it was kind of even before a lot of this craze. But then it took me about 5 years to figure out if this was the right decision for myself. And yeah, so I started transitioning in 2019.
it's I imagine it's a huge decision. I can imagine. So
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not one I took lightly. And it's the thing is, I growing up through the '90s, it was something that we didn't even really know much about. I I hid this part of me since the time I can even remember. I remember, the first time I ever tried on a dress was at 4 years old, and all this stuff. So, it's something that's always been with me. And so, uh, at in 2014, it just kind of got hit ahead where I had to come out and tell somebody, and I did. And then started taking the steps to try to figure out what exactly this was, and was it just was I just a cross dresser and that's all it was, or was it that I actually was should transition and do that? And so it took, like I said, it took about 5 years to actually make that decision.
yeah, it's something you have to think about. I don't know. So since we've been seeing this happen, obviously, I, I don't know. I don't know how everything changes, but we've now seen a lot of what's been going on with sports, where we now see people who were born males now competing against females, and I don't know if there's females competing against males, but maybe there are. But and it definitely looks like it's creating a huge disadvantage here, and in some cases creating dangerous situations. Also, I mean, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I'm completely against males competing in female sports, period. You never lose that biological advantage, no matter how long you've been on hormones. And I tried to do this last year. But so I work with, I've worked with a lot of the main organizations that you hear about. I know, I've talked to Jennifer Say, who
Yeah,
started XXXY Athletics. I know the founders of Icons Women's. I've written about this. I've talked about it a lot, and like this is the thing is, yeah, there's because it creates a dangerous situation, and it's really just not fair. Like it completely erodes what the basis behind Title IX and female sports is for, because you're like, if you can never erase that biological advantage. And so last year I was like, I'm going to just prove this. I've never really, I've always been, I always like to work out in the gym, but I'm former military, I'm pretty strong. And so I'm just going to start doing squats and working my legs enough to where I can break the raw female squat record, just to prove this point. I've been on hormone at, what is it, last year I had been on hormones for five years. And so I was like, I'm going to do this 5 years on hormones. They say it should take a year for me to lose this advantage. Within less than 4 months, I would have broken, I would have won every competition that they were having. And I had never really done squats before in my life. I just natural athlete, but I just would have won all the female competitions, almost even regardless of my weight range that I was in. And then I re-aggravated an old army injury, so I had to kind of stop that feat. But it would have been easy. I mean, I was able to lift 305 pounds off the bar. The record was 285 to squat, so I was getting there. It was, I mean, I was like doing like mini squats with 305. So it was like I only weigh 100 and I only weigh about 130 pounds. So
wow,
you know, I I could have done it, but it wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, and I remember years ago, when she was one of the best in the world at the time, Chris Everett, the tennis player, and for a while she was married to a guy named John Lloyd, and she said, John would kill me. I mean,
Yeah.
when she tried to play tennis, and he was nobody.
Well, even it was like somebody asked Serena Williams if she would play what is it, Andy Murray. And she's like, he would kill me. She's like the bottom one, like the number 100 person on the men's side would kill me. And this is like the best women's tennis player of all time, and she's like, no, I couldn't compete with males. No way.
And one of the leading people speaking out against all this, of course, is Martina Navratilova, who I would say probably is the greatest ever, but definitely.
Well, yeah, she is, but politically, we have our difference.
Oh yeah. That was what. Yeah, Riley Gaines was speaking also. She says, I agree with Martina and almost disagree with Martina almost everything, but we both agree on women's sports.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know there's some. There's Paula Scanlon. There's also Chloe Close. Is that her name or something?
Well, Chloe Cole.
Chloe Cole. Yeah.
Chloe Cole is a pretty good friend of mine. We've done a lot of events together. She wasn't one of the athletes. She's one of the detransitioners that so her story, so she was told by a doctor that she believes that she's on the autism spectrum, and that's a high there's a lot of people that are undiagnosed autistic, and what we're seeing, especially females, because the diagnostic criteria is now it's different for females, and it was always listed for the males, and so a lot of young females are undiagnosed autism, and so a lot of the correlation between gender dysphoria and autism is quite high. And Chloe is one of those where she got very fixated on it. She didn't think that she could meet female beauty standards when she would when she was on Instagram at like 12 years old, 10, I think she said like 10 or 11 years, 12 years old. She was on Instagram even though she wasn't supposed to be, and she was seeing all this stuff, and that's where she got put into her head that maybe she was a boy. She went to the doctors. The doctors told her parents that if she wasn't allowed to transition, then she would she would commit suicide. And so her parents were put into this unbelievable situation, and Chloe will tell you that wasn't true. She wasn't suicidal until after she started transitioning, not before. And then so she started puberty blockers at 13, and then the same year she started taking testosterone, had a double mastectomy at 15 years old, and then started detransitioning at 16. and she is 19, maybe 20
Yeah.
now. I just saw her a few weeks ago. We were on the Tim Cass Culture War show together.
Oh yes,
Um,
yes, yeah.
and yeah, she's one of the biggest. She's a great advocate and actually just a great person. I mean, me and Chloe, I admire Chloe quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, we're not talking about your kid going and getting a crazy haircut or a piercing
Yeah.
or dyeing their hair or it's just
No, you're talking about sterilization.
you're talking about something that's permanent and can't be turned back. I the analogy I like to use, if my kid, if my let's say my 10-year-old son really likes Star Trek and he really likes Scotty and James Doohan actually lost a finger in World War II, although they didn't show it that much. But can you imagine my 10-year-old son's coming to me saying, I want to be like Scotty. Can I get one of my fingers removed? I'm going to tell him no.
Yeah, right?
And what doctor is going to do that? That a doctor that has any integrity? I don't.
Well, yeah. Now, one of the things so I work on legislation across the country to prevent minors from
Yeah,
transitioning. I think that you can wait till you're an adult. It probably takes about that amount of time before you can actually consent to the decision, anyways, and your brain's not developed until that time. And it's interesting though, because my biggest concern with a lot of the legislation across the country, and I tell every lawmaker that I speak with, I say, you know, this law really should say though that it's not just because all the laws they designate specifically for gender dysphoria, it should just be no life altering elective surgeries for minors, period. Because there's no because basically these are going to fall flat. I believe some of them are going to fall flat on 14th Amendment violations for the Equal Protection Clause, because they basically are saying that a 16-year-old girl, female, can get breast augmentation, but a 16-year-old boy cannot. Right. So what's the difference? I mean, yes, one is female and they're enhancing the biological appearance, but still, it's still a life altering elective procedure. And the key word is on elective. Nobody should be able to do that. And I do fear that if somebody makes that argument, then they might get overturned on these bases. And so then we're back at square one, where I really do believe like the lawsuits like Chloe's and other detransitioners are really what's going to be what changes this. As much as I push legislation, I think the lawsuits, and we've seen it start to happen, is the lawsuits de-incentivize doctors from want to be able to perform this, because then it's going to hit them in the pocketbook. And we've actually seen medical malpractice insurance companies, even in states where it's legal, start to say, if you're going to provide if you're going to provide quote unquote gender affirming care, then we're not going to cover you.
yeah.
And so the insurance companies are the ones that are starting to force this as the lawsuits are coming, because it's starting to come out of their pocketbook already.
Well, how many teenage boys, would go into the doctor and say, "Doctor, can you make me bigger down there?" I mean, I don't,
You
I don't
know,
think about that, but it would happen, But
yeah,
I do remember one thing back. I think when I was a teenager, there was one girl who actually had, because if you're too big, it actually does cause you problems. I mean, you have back problems, and she actually
yeah,
got them reduced, and I know that happened with Soleil Moon Frye, the girl who played Punky Brewster. She she had a reduction when she got old because
yeah. So
if you're so big, you
reduction is
can have
different
back
though.
problems and things like
Yeah.
that. It's
Well, breast reduction is a lot different
yeah.
situation than a double mastectomy.
Oh yeah. Oh,
So you
definitely.
can
Yeah.
still have you can still breastfeed your children with a breast reduction. You
Yeah.
can't breastfeed your children after a double mastectomy. And so that's quite a bit different. And like you said, there's issues that come with back problems and causing issues to your spine if you're too big sometimes too. So that would actually, I wouldn't consider that necessarily like an elective procedure. That is something that you
Yeah.
could classify as a needed procedure for overall health, you know?
Yeah. I I can say based on my own experience, when I was 6, tonsillectomies were definitely a fad back then. It seemed like that was oh, you got a problem, rip out the tonsils. It's so
Yep.
I can't say I feel like I was cheated, but it's it does make me wonder, was that really the right thing to do? And, would I have been fine if I'd kept my tonsils, but
Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, I have a tattoo that I had gotten at a young age and have since
yeah,
had removed, so it's, you just never know what's going to happen. And that's the tattoo. And it's so interesting because different states are different. Some states you can actually get a tattoo at 15 with parental consent, and some states you can't. Here in Georgia, you have to be 18 to get a tattoo, regardless of parental consent. And yet tattoos are removable. It just takes a lot of time and money to remove them. Whereas up until last year, 2 years ago,
yeah,
2 years ago, we were not able, we were allowing these procedures to happen on children in this state. So it's just interesting to watch
yeah.
how that all takes place.
Sarah, one thing I got to ask is how often does this happen where both parents are in agreement? Where the parents are married and they say, okay, you can go get transitioned. I mean, I suspect this is happening a lot when parents are divorced, is what I'm suspecting.
We're seeing a lot of it with divorced parents. Yes.
Yeah. And the problem is when parents are divorced, the state basically becomes the parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's part of what we're seeing. The only reason why we see so much of it with a lot of these parents, and we know kind of their status, is because it's always one parent or the other that's kind of, sometimes the parents pushing it. We call them, like, there's different parents out there. There's the parents that are manipulated into it by doctors, and I would assume that those are more so, mostly, it doesn't matter married or not, they're manipulated into it by the doctors. Then you see the cases like in Texas, you see the cases, you see the states across the country now, and this is in Minnesota, for example. Minnesota requires judges to take into account how accepting a parent is of their child's gender identity, in terms of custody cases. And so that's a custody battle, which is interesting because Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill that would have required California to do the same thing. So Minnesota is a little bit more radical than even California in that regard. That was a surprise veto that we saw in California. But the thing is a lot of these states, they're these sanctuary states where if a child runs away or one parent, so like the case we saw of the Texas parents is the mom took the child to California, basically ran away to California, and California is not going to send that child back to the dad, who is seemingly not approving of the child's gender identity that their mom has claimed.
Yes.
That also changed too, because if you watch that episode where I was on the Timcast Culture War show with Chloe, there was also Harrison Tinsley, who he won custody of his child because his mom was dressing him up as a girl and trying to claim all this stuff. And he's like a boy's boy. He's not, there's no gender dysphoria or anything going on there. He was completely a boy, but his mom was trying to she was full trans house. And, it was kind of amazing that he was able to win custody of his son in California. And they didn't, it just took so much. And his story is interesting. I think I'll probably have him on my show pretty soon to talk about that. But it's interesting. He told the whole story on the Culture War show though. And it's amazing. But yeah, even in California, sometimes the system works, but it's extreme situations where it will.
I wonder if we're ever going to have a situation where, one parent decides, the other parent wants to transition my kid. Okay, we're going to Mexico, and then maybe even saying, this is not legal advice, but the parent would say, yeah, well, technically I don't have custody of my kid, but this is why I'm bringing my kid here, is because I don't want my kid's gender changed.
Yeah,
I wonder how a country like Mexico or someplace else would react to that.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to go. At the end of the day, you'd have to go somewhere that did not have extradition laws, and I believe that you'd have to go quite far for that.
But
I don't know.
Extradition's always just at the it's up to whether or not they could grant you asylum or something.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, you might start seeing it, but I think yeah, we are starting to see things change in the world, but that I think that would be actually more looked at as a kidnapping case than trying to save their child from gender ideology.
Well, yeah. Well, but a lot of kidnapping cases are just the case of non-custodial parents, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's yeah,
Yeah,
probably the vast majority.
you know, or somebody related to the non-custodial parent. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
and lately we've been seeing some things going on with the San Jose State women's volleyball team. We now have 5 schools have said that the teams have said we're not playing against them because they have a male on their team.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and so this is the way that it's going to change,
yeah,
right? We can't get these sports bodies to listen. We can't get people to stop watching these sports, it seems. So the only way that it's going to change is if these female athletes stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. We saw it in biking. We've seen it happen in multiple places where when they finally come together and say, we're not doing this, the rules change. And so good for these girls. They're taking a stand for what they believe in. And it really, the biggest problem before when we were talking about this is it's sad that they have to be the ones to stand up and do this, and that the adults in the room, I guess, well, they're adults too, but now
yeah,
when it comes to minors in high school and sports, though, because that's still an issue, but those they have to they have to be the adults in the room and say, we're not doing this. This isn't fair to us. This isn't fair to those who are losing scholarships to these athletes. It's a complete affront to Title IX. So we're going to take a stand when, they can lose their scholarships. They can lose, deals. They can lose. They have a lot to lose when they do this. And so for them to come together and the schools to support them and for them to do this, that's a huge deal. And I think now that we've seen it start to escalate and wait, and it's just going to continue down the line, and then hopefully it changes, because honestly these things are not popular. Like the transition of children, even 68% of Democrats disagree with. I believe it's like 71% of the overall population disagrees with males and female sports. And so they're not popular ideas. And so when people start to realize that they can come together on all sides and stand up against this, then it's going to finally change.
yeah. It happened earlier this year. That the girls at Lincoln Middle School in Harrison County, West Virginia, back in May, uh,
Yep.
they,
The
they
shot put, the
yeah, the
shot
shot
put girls.
putters, they stopped. Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm not surprised that West Virginia girls did this, but anyway.
It surprises me that West Virginia didn't have it banned. Actually, no. So this is actually the
Yeah,
thing is
yeah,
West
it kind of
Virginia.
surprises me that it happened at all in West
Well,
Virginia.
so West
Yes.
Virginia did ban it. So that's
Yeah.
the problem is West Virginia banned it, but then the court system ruled that just that one athlete could compete because they were grandfathered in or whatever, because they were the one that was
Yeah.
filed, they were the lawsuit, everything like that. So they put an injunction so that one athlete could compete while it was going through the court system.
Yeah.
And then the girls, they said, no, we're gonna step out.
Yeah,
I think I wrote that article over at the Post
stepped into
Millennial.
the
So
ring and stepped out. They
yep.
stepped like they're going to throw, and then they said, "No, we're not throwing," which is
Yep.
perfectly legal thing to do. Yeah, it is unfortunate that and I don't know how, and I'm sure there are other countries around the world that aren't going to support this either. I mean, if it happens at the Olympics, I think you'll see some countries literally pull out of the Olympics. I don't see Russia putting up with this. I don't see.
Well, Russia was banned from this year's Olympics, but yeah.
I don't see most of the East Asian countries putting up with this either.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know about the East Asian countries. I mean, here's the thing: China's cheated in gymnastics for sending underage girls out there. I mean, a lot of these places have cheated in sports. Now we've seen it happen in the Olympics. We saw it with Laura Hubbard in was it the Tokyo Olympics? Is that what that was? The not this last Summer Olympics, but the Summer Olympics before. She was a weightlifter and she was competing. We also saw, and that kind of spurred the IOC to start changing their rules. because now they're just going by the individual sports. So they kick the can to the individual sports organization. So USA, like, so World Swimming, World Athletic, who does all the sprinting and all the field stuff, they have banned males and female sports, but other sports haven't. And like World Rugby did, World Rowing did. So there's quite a few organizations that have, but then this Olympics we had the issue with a intersex athlete, the boxer, the intersex boxer, which is a completely different situation.
Yeah, that is.
But not really.
I have to say, I feel sorry for that person. That's got to be a very, especially when he was from Algeria.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm sure that person does not have an easy life in Algeria. I mean,
no,
intersex. I don't know. That's a different case. I don't know what you do with that, but definitely it seemed like.
Well, this is the thing is I said the same thing at the time. I feel bad.
Yeah.
That they've gone their life and maybe they didn't even know this situation, because again, growing up in Algeria, it's quite a situation to grow up with, and where homosexuality is forbidden, being trans is not accepted, like all this stuff, like it's not. You knew something was up there when it was the country that it was, and you have to feel that, like, if this person was not able to compete because they are a male, what does that do in their standing when they go back home? But at the same time, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like, the IOC needs to do their own genetic testing and say, I'm sorry, like, you're a male, like intersex or not, you're a male and you still have a biological advantage, being that you have, whether it's elevated testosterone or your bone structure is the same as a male, you have, you still have a biological advantage. And so, no, you shouldn't be competing here, even though we do feel bad. We feel bad, and it's just a rough situation, but sometimes life isn't fair, right?
And especially this, we're like, well, it's not always fair. I mean, as far as biological advantages, the best swimmer I knew personally wore size 15 shoes. I mean, is this a biological advantage? Yes, it is.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the argument that a lot of these trans rights activists will use is like Michael Phelps was like double jointed and could like had a massive wingspan. Like he was very freakishly big and able to move in the water, which caused him to be able to have that advantage. But there's a completely different advantage when it's just something like that you're born with, because all Olympic athletes probably have some sort of advantage like that. But then there's another advantage when you actually grow up with testosterone in your system and a hormone that completely makes you a much better athlete. And then your bone structure is that of the opposite sex. Like, we know that there's a difference between sexes, and sometimes in those sexes you have advantages and disadvantages, but it's also different when you're looking at male athletes compared to female athletes and how that plays out, because male athletes generally is kind of the free-for-all. It's the open category and in and of itself anyways.
I mean, they can look at skeletons and determine this was a male or this was a female, and other other differences too. I mean, a lot of the really great hitters in baseball, they've got tremendous vision, and that's, I remember when Kirby Puckett retired, it was rather shocking, but he got glaucoma. He couldn't see anymore, and that's what leads to the downfall of a lot of baseball players, as their eyesight starts to go.
Well, and then even like extreme sports too, people are kind of like, it doesn't make sense to some people, because when you look at, say, snowboarding or skateboarding or stuff like that, it's like people don't realize, like, yes, like even males have an advantage of that just because they have a stronger power to get more pop out of the bowl, the half pipe or whatnot. But even like that's why there's still difference in categories. That's why, like, even skateboarding, the way that the hips are shaped and the legs, either sometimes women are wider, so they come down in a V, and so it's less advantage, where a straight legged male is able to push down differently on the board and generate more power. It's just the way that the bone structure is set up.
And one thing I do also want to point out, I remember with swimming, I think up to about the age of 10, the girls are actually faster.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, it's when we get to about 13 is when the boys start to get way ahead.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's the one thing that people don't actually know is that long distance
yeah,
swimming, talking like miles and miles, is the only area where females a, a actually have an advantage over males because males are heavier in the water. So over those long
yes,
distances, they can't maintain, whereas females actually float better in the water, and so they are better at long distance swimming. But we're not talking about anything like what we have in the Olympics even. So it's like that's
yeah.
the only sport that you might be able to contend that like females have an advantage over males.
It's it's said that women are designed to be, to have more endurance because they're designed to to be in labor for 16 hours.
Yeah.
It's a I don't know if we'd be able to do that or not. It's a men.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
I mean, there are all these things, where we're designed certain ways. It's uh, and I do wonder sometimes, if transitioning. Do you think it's something that's determined at birth, or do you think it's something you learn along the way? It's
I think
maybe
it's
you have a traumatic experience or something like that. It's
it's truly something that's determined at birth, I believe.
yeah,
So there's been a lot of studies. Deborah So writes about it in her book End of Gender. At least with homosexuality, is that they've kind of determined that there's this a hormone imbalance in the womb that can kind of create this that can kind of create homosexuality. That's why you're kind of born with it. And it does seem like every transsexual that I know who's happy in their transition, we all kind of have similar stories to where we knew, at the earliest age, at the onset of our earliest memories, that we wanted to be, the opposite sex. Like I wanted to be a girl when I was 4 years old, and that's like my earliest memory. But again, this is the whole difference though, is I never felt like I was trapped in the wrong body. I never had this out of body experience, and I knew I wasn't a girl, but there was just something that was different with my brain that said, hey, you want to be that way, you're envious of girls and you want to live that life instead, and you don't know why that you were born this way, but it is. Now, I do think that there are some people that go through a traumatic experience and then they believe that this is what's right for them. And I know some people that go through a traumatic experience at a young age and they grow up thinking that this is what's right for them. But sometimes that is. And what we do see in a lot of the young females that are transitioning, this is part of the reason why the mental health space needs to catch up a little bit and not just throw this gender transition at children, because what we are seeing is that some girls that have been sexually assaulted are wanting to leave womanhood completely because of that sexual assault. And so now when they go in, they're like, I don't want to be a woman. They're like, oh, then you're trans and you just transition to a
yeah,
boy. So they're like trying to opt out of womanhood because they were victimized.
yeah.
So we see that, but then they're the ones that are generally, we see that they don't stick around in their transition because they're not actually gender dysphoric. They're suffering from other mental health comorbidities.
Well, yeah. The one example I always like to use is Lana Turner's daughter, and I know this is going way back, but Lana Turner was absolutely beautiful, but she was always with these guys who were horrible to her. And Lana Turner's daughter ends up actually shooting the guy when she was like 14, and she was a lesbian her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, is there a connection here? Especially.
Yeah, I mean, there's can be a connection with that sometimes too. But yeah, then a lot of my friends, I mean, I know they're the same way. They always had romantic feelings for girls their whole
Yeah,
life. So there's different reasons. Like I said, most of the time, the people that end up staying trans or end up either, I mean, even in homosexuality, a lot of the times, like bisexuals, or they might try to opt out and date women, but then they determine that that's not right, so then they go back to dating men. And but true lesbians are generally, I've seen a lot of the lesbians that are not non-bi women will they've been that way from birth. So there's a lot of it's a lot of science, a lot of complication behind it, but I think that for the most part, if it's actual gender dysphoria, it's probably something that you're born with.
Yeah, and that brings us to the bigger question. What has happened to science? I'm just scratching my head over this that you can now be promoting this stuff. It seems,
Yeah, the science behind a lot of stuff, and I don't know if it's necessarily the science or
or
whether.
scientists, the people who work in science, I guess we should say.
Yeah,
Science is a process. It's
I'm
not.
seeing it with I look at it from a huge area of our mental health industry as a whole. So I look at it from the mental health aspect. I think we're seeing a lack of good doctors out there. I'm not all, obviously there's some good, really good therapists and stuff out there, but the problem is I see three types that are actually pushing this type of stuff. There's one who actually believes that this is what's going to help this person. There's those that are manipulating patients. And then I think the overarching is just a lot of laziness in the mental health space right now.
Yeah,
They're in society in general, they just want to push a pill onto people. They want the easy fix. Everybody just wants
yeah,
the easy fix. And so they're just going to throw a pill at people. And so instead of treating the root cause, you get people that have, bipolar disorder or cluster B personalities or autism or all these other things that are all known to be comorbidities now of gender dysphoria. Instead of treating those, they're just saying, nope, you're trans. We're just going to throw a pill at it and you're going to be fine, or testosterone at it. And this is what it
yeah,
is. But we're not just seeing it with that either. We're also seeing it with SSRIs. So what ends up happening is, so a lot of these kids are just being placed on SSRIs, and that's causing a lot of issues in and of itself. Not a huge fan of SSRIs. I'd rather see more research done into psychedelics and stuff like that. I think that there's a lot more benefit to those with the help of therapists. But what we're seeing is they're throwing these SSRIs at children instead of working through their problems, and then when they throw them on puberty blockers, or they throw them on cross-sex hormones, or throw them on all this other stuff, right? Then that causes other issues in the mental health space, and they throw them on SSRIs on top of the puberty, or on top of the cross-sex hormones. So then it just causes this entire cycle of this entire storm of big pharma throwing drugs at people,
yeah,
and nobody's actually getting better because the mental health professionals aren't actually doing their job.
yeah, and yeah, yeah. I mean, I say it many times. I'm so glad I got out of high school before drugging kids became a fad. I mean, it's because I don't know what I would do now. It's just everything, and sometimes it can just be and sometimes it can just be a change in diet that will fix things. If
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I know a lady who said, I got rid of my psoriasis when I changed my diet. It's uh,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's yeah, your diet will change. I mean, for me, I actually had, when I first got out of the army, I have anxiety, insomnia, all from serving, and then I'm on top of that gender dysphoria. But I was initially prescribed Lexapro, so an SSRI, Lexapro, and about 6 months on it, I didn't really like it. It didn't really do anything. I didn't really feel
yeah,
any different on it, and so I traded that in for a gym membership. And at the time, I actually don't smoke anymore, but I was doing like situational vaping of cannabis. We have Delta 8 that's legal here, so I was using Delta 8, vaping it for situational anxiety. But then I stopped doing that and found other ways to do it. But really, it was the gym membership that did the most, because exercise is an automatic serotonin boost in your system. So that's the number one reason why you have these issues, is a lack of serotonin. And so that serotonin boost is going to, just from working out and getting the blood pumping and everything like that, that helps a lot. That's what it was for me, was the gym.
yeah. That's one thing. Sometimes they used to do when boys in school would get unruly, they just make them do something that kind of made them tired.
Yeah.
It's really and I think there's so much that we don't know about the mind and mental health that I think we're just there's so many things we can learn. I don't know what's going to happen. Also,
Yeah, like I said, I'm fascinated about learning about like what mushrooms and psychedelics and stuff can do to the mind. Been reading a lot about that, how it creates neurotransmitters between different areas of the brain that don't usually connect, and so a lot of times those connections actually help the brain function better, and that's why you're seeing it. Like there's been promising studies that show that three sessions of LSD psychotherapy can have lasting effects that outperform SSRIs for up to a year at least.
Yeah.
And that was the last time that they checked in on the person was a year. So it could be longer than a year that it has lasting effects on PTSD. And this stuff it's been known to cure alcoholism. It's been known to cure, help with PTSD completely in veterans. And so I'm all for allowing, this is one of the things that I hope that we see in the next election is it was Rand Paul and Cory Booker crossed the aisle to expand the Right to Try Act to the right to try psychedelic therapy for everybody if you wanted it, and that didn't go anywhere. But at least in so hopefully we can kind of see that get another uptick, because it should be, you should be allowed to try stuff, and especially under the guise of a therapist.
Yeah, and even Dan Crenshaw's an ally on this.
Yeah,
to his credit. Yeah. We'll call him out when he gets something right. Yeah,
when he gets it right. And under the last Trump administration, Donald Trump expanded the Right to Try Act already to allow anybody who is terminally ill to seek any type of experimental procedures for whatever reason if they were terminally ill. So hopefully we can try to push to expand the Right to Try Act even more,
Yeah, well, okay. This has been a great show. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about. Do you have anything else to say before we go?
No, but just everybody, you can find me Sara Higdon on YouTube, Sara Higdon _ on X and Instagram, and you just go find my stuff at sarahhigdon.com, and also go check out all the work we're doing over at freethepeople.org.
I can think of 3 of them. What is your favorite Sara song?
I only know the one. It's the Sara. I don't know the name.
Sara by Starship. There's Sara by Fleetwood Mac, and there's Sara Smile by Daryl Hall and John Oates.
It was the Sara Smile one that I know.
Sara.
And I know Starship too, but I don't know which song that one is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's What'd you like best about this talk today?
Oh, I don't know. It was fun. Yeah, you're gonna do that.
It has been fun having you on here. Yeah, we'll certainly have to talk about more people later. I had your friend Maggie on too, and Maggie was a blast. She's a great person. We talked about Melee. It's amazing what's happening down there.
Yep. Maggie's here in Atlanta, and we hang out often.
Well, the foundation's in Atlanta too, so they moved their headquarters down there. I said I want to give I wish I could give every young libertarian now a trip in a time machine to go back and do a fee seminar at the mansion in Irvington, since it's not there anymore. But until then, well, thank you, Sara. Please go to Buy Me a Coffee to support my show. Please like my video, subscribe to the channel. Go buy my novel Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. I'm Chris Baker. Thank you, Sara Higdon. We're out.